myself, Zach Giacomato, I'm planner with the RDCK, stepping in to be the minute taker for this meeting. We have Director Gary Jackman, Chair Julie March, Commissioner Sean Reichs, and Commissioner Bronca Lewandowski. And I'll hand it over to the chair.
Okay, I call to order meeting 2:12 p.m. today. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples with the traditional lands we are meeting on today, and adoption of the agenda.
I'll move to accept the agenda as presented to us.
Received for minutes have been received. Okay, so it's a 5-1 temporary use permit application. Laura Benning. Can I see a copy of that too, please? Okay. Oh, just this little swing piece. It's all closed notes, like really short.
I can just interject.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
I can see that.
Because,
yeah,
in this case, I am actually the planner who's processing that application.
Yeah.
I can confirm that the applicant was invited via email to attend, but there is no record of the response, and they're not online right now. But just in general, kind of an overview of the application, if that's helpful for everyone.
Yeah.
The proposal is to do a significant amount of site alteration and extraction on the property in order to create more developable land in the form of benches, because it is a pretty steep slope where they're proposing these works.
So on this map, is it from here to here or from here to here?
The excavation to create the benches would be on the east side of Highway 3A, so the mountain side, up in those triangular shaped
So
parcels.
taking it from there, bringing it to the beach side.
Some of it would be brought to the beach side. Most of it would be brought to another location to be processed. The property owner and the applicant is not looking at any sort of license to actually process material on site. He just wants to be able to excavate a large amount of sand and gravel to create benches for, in order to make his land more usable, essentially. That's what they've identified, yep.
And you have to ask permission to do that?
It's based on the volume that he's looking at excavating. Like, it is a pretty significant amount of excavation. So he had conversations with the province even before he applied for this application, and they were informed that he needed some type of mining license. I don't even know the exact type.
So it's a huge excavator. It must be.
Yeah,
it does quote the cubic meters on there. I can pull it up here as well.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through, but I'm not at any of the numbers here right
now. And so because we haven't had this, I don't think, since I've been here, where the person didn't show up. So basically, we still go through the same process where we're looking at support or not supporting.
Yeah, or you can make comments or recommendations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to share anything more, Zach?
Aside from that, I don't think I have anything specific to share, but I can definitely answer questions if anyone has any specific questions. I don't want to kind of speak on behalf of the applicant, but in terms of what they've provided as submission material, I can definitely try and clarify anything if it's confusing.
So this is showing
Was there any slope stability study?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask engineering.
They're cutting block for the most part.
Cutting block?
There would be some aspect of that, but it was also a lot of, like, I did a site visit earlier this summer, and it was a lot of sand and gravel. And I'm looking for the specific cubic meter number just to give you guys some context.
Like blasting bedrock or...
They think for the most part, we may end up down to rock, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
So that would leave a stable slope.
So they're not blasting the rock, they're getting into the rock?
They didn't say that they would thing. I did raise that as a question, and they said it would be more heavy equipment, like excavators, taking out the sand and gravel material and taking another site to be further processed. But they didn't say anything and didn't describe anything in the realm of like blasting or that type of like mines work.
Because that's on the, like, let's say the east side of the highway, like, so it
The mountainside,
could potentially have erosion.
Destabilization, depending on what the.
Yeah, there's houses below it, right?
So that's like, where exactly is
A
that?
little north of Kristen.
Okay.
This process is being initiated, is that right?
In terms of the site works or just the application process?
The removal of material and the set.
They've done a small amount of like road works, like grading works. So in my opinion, yes, they have initiated some of the works. When I was on site, I notified the property owner that some of the works that were already completed would also trigger a environmentally sensitive development permit application because they did complete site alteration and essentially disturbance within 15 meters of a creek. So that was one thing that they were made aware of. I'm not sure if someone showed up or not. So that would be a supplemental application that would be required to allow this whole project to move forward.
So okay, you keep this line here, is that a creek then? Is that a creek? That they're,
Yeah, that would be the approximate location. So it's the north southerly property, the one that's outlined in yellow in the referral package, that actually shows the approximate location of that creek.
okay.
And I was there, I think it was early August, and it was still, the water was still flowing, like it was a minimal flow. But based on how dry everything was at that point in time and the fact that the water was still flowing in that channel, it would most likely be defined as a water course in the official community plan for Area A, and then therefore trigger a development permit application. And so all of that information was provided to the applicant, but I think what they want to do is at least get a sense of whether the board would support this application before they consider hiring an environmental consultant to complete that as a process for them.
So if they got approval for this, then they would have to go for the environmental.
Or at least like moving forward to a public hearing, like not necessarily a full approval of the application. But at least if the board was willing to consider it further, then at that point in time, they would consider finding the right environmental consultant to help them through that development permit application.
Wow. And what did you say, within 15 meters of the? That's pretty close.
So I guess my concerns are disruption to the flow of traffic on Highway 3A, like they're going to be crossing the highway depending on which direction they're transporting material. And they're asking for a 3-year term too. So, I guess I understand where they want to the proposed comparisons and alterations to the property. My initial thought is not really a fan of that marking the material. I can support it for their own personal development. To me, it's, I don't know what the proper context is, but a little bit too involved for me. When they're considering taking the product elsewhere for profit, I guess.
Oh, right.
To fund that project.
And does it say where they're taking it to?
They didn't.
Move to other sites and set to be sold.
So basically carrying sand and gravel and that kind of, whatever they're excavating, that's what the product is?
That would be the material they were describing to me, yep.
And then as far as the permitted uses of an R2, it doesn't say that accessory use of gravel or movement of materials and stuff like that. So in my mind, I try to kind of stick with club. So I'm just wondering if any of these extra uses would cover with their proposals.
Given that it's residential, is that what you're,
R2.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're correct that none of the accessory uses in the R2 zone really line up with this kind of interim kind of proposal to remove material from the site. The temporary use permit application is essentially like the type of application that is required when they're undertaking something for a set period of time, not necessarily indefinitely, but undertaking a use that's not permitted currently, but they need some sort of allowance to conduct that use for a period of time. So in this case, they're basically asking for the temporary permission of a quarry, more or less, for that 3-year period. So you're correct in terms of it doesn't really line up with the intent of that R2 designation or country residential zone right now. But the TUP, the temporary use permit application, would essentially facilitate that interim use of extraction or a quarry use.
So my just general feeling is there's a few quarries up and down the East Shore already. Some people comment on the runoff from the driveways, the traffic material on the highway, just tons of gravel and stuff like that. To me, like 3 years is quite a long duration.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you did approve it, if that could be shortened, but they're also asking for the option to keep it as well. So I feel like these projects can take a long time. I understand that. I understand that they want to generate revenue from it, but I'd like to see that shortened up for sure.
And if they're selling, is it almost, in fact, like starting a business there? If it's a 3-year project and they're going to extract the materials, take it somewhere else, get it processed, and then sell, that's a business. That's not a residential use of the land. Is my thinking kind of in the right direction?
I think your thinking is on the right track, and the reason why this application is required is because of that fact, essentially, because a quarry can't be permitted as a principal or an accessory use in this current designation. So this whole nature of the TUP application, the temporary use permit, is intended to give them permission to do something that is currently outside of the land use regulations for a specified period of time.
Right, so it's temporary use, but it's like temporary business use as opposed to like just moving rocks from this part of your property to another part to, landscape it or stabilize it or something. It's to make money.
I'm curious, and I'm sorry, excuse me for my ignorance, not on the maps. Who are the neighboring properties?
Yeah.
There's a few neighbor properties they have Highway 3A addresses, but it's a bit of like a cul-de-sac. I think it's actually a strata development with,
where they would all have access from that same, including this property?
this property would have a different road access.
Build white thick fence and then you cut down that south and you settle in there. Down just sold it, because then who sold it.
I think there's about 5 strata lots. And so they were included on the notification. Actually, not all of them were originally, but when they saw the sign, they contacted me because they were outside of the 100-meter notification buffer that we use under the Local Government Act. But once they expressed an interest in this application and concerns, I sent them the referral package and received written responses back from some of the neighbors who are concerned to varying degrees.
Right, yeah.
And some of the concerns line up with what you were saying about traffic, certainly.
Never mind noise, big cheese.
Yeah. Just temporary permit 3 years, just temporary. Yeah, so I guess what I'm curious about is these neighbors may have their various concerns, like how does their input influence the decision making?
Zach has to compile that, but also your comments and would be added to that, and that would go to the rural committee, and you're thinking it will make a October.
I'm hoping so, yeah.
Okay.
So I see snippets of all kinds of stuff because they get copied and stuff. But there will be neighboring comments, Ministry of Highways comments, Fortis Electric, everybody who may have an interest. All those comments will become part of the public document that's your report, because that puts along with your comments.
Yeah, your comments would be incorporated into my staff report along with other neighbors' concerns.
And because you were actually on site in August, what is just like your observations as the impact for the neighbors? Like how without being there and seeing it and experiencing it, like how much is it actually going to impact those neighbors?
Oof. I'm hesitant to kind of speculate on that because I'm really not like a mining professional or like a geotechnical engineer or
The
anything
work
like
that was
that.
done was months ago.
Like the site works, you're saying?
Yeah. Cut the driveways and stuff. That
The
was,
road work.
there's nothing happening there right now.
No, but the road work's been done, but this isn't about the road work. This is about
Yeah.
continued excavation ongoing for potentially up to 3 years.
Yes, no,
And then moving all of that material.
but there would have been nothing for Zach to see except
Oh,
The dirt roads and things
there's
like
nothing
that.
for him to see. There's no equipment.
I get that. I'm talking more, so when you're on that property, can you like see the neighbors, like, or?
Not really, like these properties, specifically the more southerly triangular parcel is, I'm fairly confident, entirely surrounded by crown land on like the mountainside of the highway. There are other smaller residential properties like below the highway along the shoreline.
Which they're not talking about excavating.
They're not talking about doing any type of quarry or excavation work on the below the highway part. The applicant did mention that they may use some of the sand and gravel for minor kind of driveway repairs, filling of potholes, that kind of thing. That typically would not require any type of application, in the same way that someone's allowed to construct a gravel road on their property without, a quarry use or a TEP application. But for this, what we're considering is really the larger scale excavation that he's considering to create these benches for more usable land. I think what he described in the referral package, and specifically the proposal summary, was so that they can have gardens and use the land a bit more effectively, because right now it is a fairly, steep, loose slope.
I guess one other thing we could consider is to have a zoning to a zoning category that we allow money. That might be something they should consider if they want to proceed with this. My instinct is I kind of like people to follow the permitted and accessory uses that are laid out. That's how I feel about this, and if that was the case, all these other issues wouldn't really apply because it would be permitted to do it. Like you said, we're just giving our recommendation.
Yeah,
There's
no,
other
absolutely.
departments that are involved in this.
Yeah, and I think for me, as, a landowner, in a way I always think about it is, how would I feel as the neighbor? Right? When you move into an area thinking that it's a certain thing, and that I think I'm still getting over the temporary use permit being 3 years and then potentially wanting an extension on that. Like that, there's something in my brain that's not computing on that.
And our application for that, it allows up to 3 years and allows up to 1 3-year renewal. That's just the standard wording, and they've asked for the maximum. Some people might ask for a 6-month temporary use permit to process and sell firewood until the period is done, that kind of thing.
Okay.
There was some temporary use south of Creston, but I think it was Area C. Those kind of things.
Okay.
And that's pretty temporary. But trees down, sell wood there, it's gone. If you ask for 3 + 3, of course, it becomes more.
Yeah.
And how big is this, the triangular piece where they're talking about taking the materials from? Because why would it take 3 years unless, who knows, maybe they can only do it in the month of July. They can only afford equipment to work for 1 month of the year. Who knows?
So
I don't know.
they're taking it from a parcel that's 7.49 acres and placing it on a parcel that's 3.86.
So in the referral package, I think the more northerly one was shown as like a blue outline, and then the southerly one was a yellow outline, or I might have that mixed up.
Actually, the one that.
Yep. So the 7.5 acres that you mentioned, is the yellow outline? Sorry, so both sides of the highway, because it is one legal lot, and then the I guess what is it? 3.86 acres or 1.6 hectares would be that blue outline, including the small triangular piece that's on
So
the.
it's not even moving it from one side of the highway to the other, it's moving it up the highway to another?
They haven't really provided that level of clarity in terms of if and where the gravel may be used on site. But the applicant was very clear that they're not looking at doing any sort of significant kind of earthworks on the lower portion of the properties. It was really meant to be if some of the roads need, if there's low areas from drainage issues or anything like that, they would use that gravel to kind of keep the driveways leveled and fill in potholes or do things like that. But the purpose of the TUP would really be the extraction component. There isn't necessarily anything stopping someone from, bringing gravel onto their property, even if it's from a commercial operation elsewhere, to do minor driveway improvements and that type of thing, provided it's not with.
Unless you're
Yeah.
then you can't move soil.
Or unless you're bringing that fill close to the shore of Kootenai Lake or another water course.
If you're ALR, you can't move soil.
Yeah, there's a set limit in cubic meters that you can bring to a property in the ALR or remove.
So for clarification, so the excavation, you're talking about the blue triangle there, right?
Both properties, both colored triangles.
Oh, the blue
Yeah,
and-
there would be benches created on both of the upper portions.
So this is all one property?
Two legal lots.
Two legal parcels, okay, I see, sorry. And in total, those two triangles, are they, what, 3.5 acres each kind of thing?
7.5 acres for the yellow and
Oh, and then the other one is.
3.8 or so for the.
Got it, okay,
blue one.
thank you. Got it, okay. Okay, I didn't, they're two separate parcels. So the application is for both parcels?
Yep.
Got it.
For both legal lots.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to catch up.
That's okay. It's a complex one.
It is a complex one. Okay, what it is, Sean?
Just from a property ownership perspective, I'm sure it would be nice to have gravel more accessible to it, so you can hide trees for trucking, almost as much or more than the material itself. Because they're not in the processing that trucking away in that process, I don't see any upside for us as residents. But so I am in favor of them using the material, the topsoil, the sand, and rock, and the ground, to the properties that are used to have it to build these benches, to use it as fill and to create parking areas and for their driving lanes. So I understand that, but I'm not really in favor of the excess materials being permitted to be removed for resale for financing reasons. I'm just not a fan of another quarry of gravel pit. That's how I feel.
So I'm just wondering, Zach, if the comments are absolutely valid, if you were to phrase a comment along that line, you could say you do not support the application as submitted, but you would support use of material on site or whatever, creating better building lots, and specifically not supporting moving material off site per se. But I think, Zach, you're looking for a support or not support, or just a comment in general. Does it matter? Either.
Any kind of feedback, yeah. Generally, we phrase these, the recommendations from the APHCs as either support or not support. But if there's maybe a condition kind of related to that, that you would kind of, or that you would support components of what their proposal is, but maybe not to the scale that they're proposing or the length of time that they're proposing. You know, like at the end of the day, it's a recommendation that's made to the Rural Affairs Committee and the board. So I think you're free to kind of be flexible or, you know, address different kind of components of the proposal separately in that recommendation.
But to move material on your own site, provided you're not impacting the riparian areas, creekfront or lakefront, you don't need to permit.
You generally don't.
Unless you're ALR or,
exceeding a specific volume where either a mine's license or a mine's exemption permit is required. And that's what the applicant was told by the province, and is that in this case that there would be, and I don't know all of the terminology with regards to Ministry of Mines, but there would be some aspect of review by Ministry of Mines and a permit or an approval issued from them prior to him conducting that larger scale excavation to create those benches.
Yeah, I guess that would just reiterate the 3-year thing, why it needs to be 3 years with a possibility of renewing for another 3. Because that, like Sean was saying, what's that going to mean on the road? Noise, ongoing, we all know what it's like to go around the corner, not that there's a sharp one, but when there's loose gravel on the road and, summer traffic and kids on bikes and, just the 3 plus possible 3, and that it sounds a little bit like a business, and I would question that too.
So I'd like to make a motion to be in favor of the extraction of materials from the east side of Highway 3A for the purposes of redistributing it onto the properties below Highway 3A on the west side, for reasons such as fill, parking and driveway maintenance, etc. However, I do not support, I would not be in favor of any quarrying and gravel permits for any period of time. Amendments to that or objections to the
I'm just wondering what wording here. Because I did appreciate something that you had said, Sean, about like the price of an access for us on the shore for gravel and so on. I don't know that I completely oppose it, but I oppose it being taken somewhere else.
But then if it stays,
But then if it stays on site, it becomes a quarry. And so yes, this is what I'm trying to reconcile. Yeah, because I don't support another commercial quarry on the shore, even if it's for only a temporary 2 years.
Thanks. My reasoning to this laid out in the club for accessory uses and primary permitted uses. That's what I call that.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for showing me that list, because that's, again, I always think of myself as a neighbor. That's where my mind is coming from too, as a community member neighbor. So yeah, I appreciate the way that Sean worded that, and would second that, basically, that what we do support and what we don't support. Do you feel like we got that wording down, Zach?
I could always read back what I have for notes right now, and if you wanted to just correct anything or add something, just to make sure I have the recommendation down as, because I appreciated the way you worded it. So what I wrote down here, and it's kind of rough right now, is support for the extraction for the purposes of fill, driveway improvements, etc., on the lower portions of the properties, but not support for the transport of the material outside of the community for processing elsewhere.
That's all.
Okay. And then I did just add another thing saying clear non-support for another full-scale quarry on the East Shore. I don't know if I should include that or.
I would say, commercial, right? If that's what we're kind of like, we don't want another commercial quarry.
Like I said, they can always apply for a zoning.
Right,
change.
which is-
I mean, that's only $1,800, $2,000.
Right.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
So if they wanted something like that, they
If they
would have
don't
to apply
pursue
for
this,
that.
there's another means of doing it.
Right, so maybe that would be a good thing to add to the, if they're wanting to look at commercially selling this stuff to apply for the alternative zoning?
The one difficulty that I'll just point out, or just something to consider, if they were to apply for like a full-blown zoning bylaw amendment, that would essentially allow this use indefinitely. Whereas what they've identified is that they only do need to operate that kind of excavation project for a set period of time. And in my initial discussions with him prior to even the submission, what I had indicated is maybe, I don't even know how to word this, but maybe it's an easier thing for the community to swallow if they know that it's temporary versus a permanent use.
Right, no, that's a good point. That's why this conversation, so like, it's kind of showing goodwill on them that they're not applying for this other zone rechange. So they're not, their intention is not some long-term commercial quarry there.
Relatively speaking, yeah, like 3 years, but not indefinitely is what they're seeking.
Can you bring to light the rezoning application process, like who,
That we do at a public hearing.
Mm-hmm. And there could be a public hearing for this type of application too. This temporary use permit, as opposed to a rezoning, it doesn't kind of bypass that public engagement process. There still is the notice signs that go up on the property, the letters that are sent to surrounding property owners. A public hearing still is an option with this type of process. So like procedurally, the temporary use permit does follow a very similar kind of process to a zoning bylaw amendment. The real difference is that it is for like a set amount of time. It's not meant to be a permanent use or an indefinite change to the land use bylaw. The zoning wouldn't change under this application. It would just give them a permit to do something that's currently outside of the zoning for a set amount of time.
Yeah, and you know, I'm just thinking about a little bit more, I guess because there's that 7-acre piece all beside me right now, like, it's not a huge chunk of property. And if ultimately their intention is they're basically trying to design the land to make it usable to live there, like, is that what they're wanting to build to live or build to sell, or we don't know. But they want to make it usable land. That's what their main intention is to make it usable land.
Yeah, and I think what they've expressed in the proposal summary in their application as submitted was really to do more like gardens and landscaping and that type of stuff. They didn't express any sort of interest in building more dwellings, at least at this point in time. You know, based on the lot size, at least for the one larger piece, the 7.5 acre piece, I think the zoning bylaw would allow them to build an accessory dwelling unit, as an example. But that does also, we would need to consider what other types of structures and dwellings they currently have on the property, because some of the houses that are currently on the lot may have been built before there was a zoning bylaw. So I think we'd have to do a bit more of a review, but yeah, I don't know if they could build more houses, I guess, based on the information.
Right, and I guess in the what's called page here, prior to any building permit, subdivision application, or subsequent planning, the owner must prepare the land to enable access assessment, benching, etc. And then it says, please note the owner intends to develop the 3 lower lots, so the one below the highway, for sale or long-term rentals. So there is that in their minds where they're going.
when the subdivision process is initiated, can it also include a zoning change for certain parcels? Certain components of it?
If the proposed lots did not meet the minimum lot size requirements, then a rezoning application would be required. But for example, the R2 zone requires a 1 hectare minimum lot size.
1.6.
Yeah. So for the 1.6 piece, they would not be able to subdivide further without a zoning bylaw amendment. For the larger piece, the 3 hectare piece, they could subdivide that lot further under the current zoning regulations.
Yeah, got nothing further to add.
Okay, yeah, I'm welcome.
Yeah, but without seeing it too, it's like, how does it change, does it change the neighborhood, you know, like the people that, I mean, there's a map, it shows the dwellings, right, is that the little red dots, or yellow dots, or
Yeah.
the houses?
So,
So I don't know if there's like bush all the way along the highway, whether they would, that all disappear while they're excavating, and how that changes the neighborhood. You know, I just had, last year, my neighbor across the road from me, who owns 100 acres, and I just on a half-acre little piece, and he wanted to selectively log, and I get it, you know, he wanted to minimize the fuel. And he actually was amenable to a conversation, like, I'd like the trees to stay along the highway, I'd like there to be like less space between the cut down trees. And anyway, the conversation was great because he could recognize that me being across the street, that would be my view forever. Well, you know, my lifetime anyway, because for all those trees to grow back would take some time. So that was on private property and he didn't have to ask me. But that's a consideration too, is the people across the road looking at that site, are they gonna have a significant change in where they anticipated to live? Was forest behind it? Yeah, just basically community engagement to make sure that things don't change too
In
much.
our context, we're just kind of speaking on behalf of our community. That's kind of our role. We're not definitive in this. Like,
Yeah.
MOTI is involved, Habitat Branch is involved, you know, everybody else, Interior Health, so all those people are far more knowledgeable than us in these circumstances. So I think all we're looking for here is our recommendation.
Our recommendation, yeah.
More concerns, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how do I second, like, I like what Sean said, because, you know, I totally understand them wanting to make the property more usable. I think part of why I'm not in favor of taking the material off and selling it elsewhere is it promotes the possibility for, oh, look, we got this much money, oh, we'll excavate more, we'll move more. Like, if the primary purpose is for development of the property to landscape it and gardens and so on, I support that part of it as well. Does that make sense, Doug?
I think so. Like, so are you kind of trying to get at like, what is the end use of this? Like, and you may have concerns if, say, it's to permit or to facilitate additional residential development, but not necessarily for like landscaping or you know, agricultural.
The concern is any kind of like movement towards even like a temporary use of 3 years of a commercial quarry.
Mm-hmm.
That really is the concern. The development of the land, making it more useful, I totally support. But there's concerns around it. I mean, I've lived near, I've seen that before, especially at Warner Selma Way, where all of a sudden somebody buys a piece of property and you think they're going to have their house on it. And the next thing they've got a whole-on quarry there, and it makes a real mess, and it has a lot of disturbance, a lot of noise, a lot of dust, a ton of dust, and it affects a lot of people, not to mention the wildlife, right? So that would be the only thing, but it's, yeah. I mean, I totally understand making the land more useful.
Did you want Sept to read back again what
Yeah.
captured? I mean, you can vote on that as a statement.
Yeah, that's what
And then you can add a separate statement or move to the next one if you want. But you could maybe look and see if that's the first statement. You don't have to go beyond it. I think that's what you're saying, Sean, with the other checkpoints as well.
As it goes. Okay, yeah, no. So,
Do you want me to read back what I got from you earlier? So, draft recommendation is to support the extraction for the purposes of fill, driveway improvements, etc., on the lower portions of the properties, but not support the transport of the material outside of the community for processing elsewhere.
yeah, I support that statement.
So I think that was a motion originally, what you had spoken. So was there like a seconder for that?
The second motion.
Okay.
And We can,
Yeah, if you call for a formal vote in this chair.
oh, okay, we have to call for
Other
a vote,
discussions.
formal vote on that. So what were we voting on? Okay,
Yeah, I'm in favor of yours.
yeah, I'm in favor.
These, those are recommendations to the court, because we're all in that.
Yeah.
Court, depending what happens with all the other
Other
court.
steps.
Yeah. And so I would try to capture the discussion and then include that recommendation in my staff report. That's how that would be incorporated eventually.
Glad you mentioned. Okay. So moving on to 5.2. The development of variance permit application done on May.
Boring, I'm gonna destroy this cord by twisting it. This is the one with the setback variance for the boathouse. So there's a big chunk, you want maybe help to give an overview, there's a big
Yep.
parcel above, and then there's a little piece below the highway at the lake, which is fairly intensely developed.
That's this current topic.
Yep. Item 5.2. And this isn't my application as like a development planner with the RDCK, but I have a little bit of familiarity with it. So I think Director Jackman gave you a pretty good kind of general synopsis, but if you have other questions, I can also try to answer those.
So when I read this, it looks like the western boundary of the property is shared with the high water mark.
Yeah, there's, it's split across, whoops, trying to find the property, property is either side of the highway. So you see uphill forested with the forest in the lake there. Then it's fairly intensely developed down here.
It's the western portion.
It's this portion, and then on that, it's
So
page
there's
40.
accretion line there.
Yeah.
When it's accreted, that's considered part of the property, is that correct?
If they go through an accretion application with the surveyor general, then yeah, the natural boundary would determine the new property boundaries.
So that's what it looks like was done there, because there's an accretion survey that looks like it was complete.
Yeah, it looks like that was done, but it's not reflected in the other RDCK mapping that was included in the referral package. And that's why I was just a little bit confused kind of going through this, because I think the lot lines we currently have, because it hasn't all been finalized and updated in our mapping, doesn't actually reflect where the surveyed property lines are currently based on the accretion.
Here it's hard to see the one faint dotted line, the faint pink dotted line. And we see the accretion applications as well. So I saw this and looked at it. And BC legal surveyor, it's subjective. It's their opinion as to whether there's trees, vegetation, soil, whatever developing. They would put this from here back under the Land Act, or whether it's more under the influence of the water, under the Water Act. And under common law, if things change over time, say you're on a river that meanders, the corner of your property that's carved off as the river moves over, it's not yours anymore. If you're upstream or downstream and the soil is landing there, that is yours. And it had to be because we didn't have roads. So you use the rivers, especially in Eastern Canada. So there's two sets of common law, Western and Eastern Canada, where they have interpretation of common law. But if you want to develop something, you can't just say it's mine because I say so. Here, the Surveyor General has to say, yes, under common law, we recognize this is under the Land Act. You own the land at the foreshore, so you have certain rights. But within those rights, there's restrictions like setbacks, environmental development permit areas, setbacks for various things. So this is looking for a variance. One, the accretion is not our business, it's Surveyor General and the subjective opinion of a professional that this is becoming land as opposed to the transition to the Water Act. And then Zach's job is to identify all the things that you have to do to stay a little bit back to protect that water.
And the referral package does also note that if this variance was approved to allow a 0.2 meter setback, where the general setback is 2.5 meters, a supplemental environmentally sensitive development permit application would be required because the structure is being proposed within 15 meters of the natural boundary of Kootenai Lake. So there would be another application that would be considered by staff if this is supported. It's a boathouse.
The boathouse, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's so weird. I only got 5 trees. That was the only thing that came in my email. It's a third thing. So I never saw these other things.
Yeah, some came way back for the August meeting, right, for the package for August, and then
Oh,
first
okay.
on that.
Because there's so many emails for this meeting. I have multiple. Anyway, so I'm sorry. These first two I have no familiarity with. Okay, so it's a boathouse.
Yeah, there would be like a marine rail system to bring a boat out of the water and into this. Yeah.
So is that a separate application, is that a rail system?
I don't know if it's considered general permissions under the ministry.
I don't know either because it keeps changing. With front counter BC, you're allowed to dip your toes into the water. You can make a dock of a certain size and do a few little minimal things without going through a process. That's general permissions. And over the years, it's changed. How big could that dock be? How many pilings could it be? What would the impact be? If you're below that threshold, they don't want to know about it. If you hit that threshold or above that threshold, that's an application under the Water Section 57.
Either the Water Sustainability Act or one of those.
And then on the land side, we have environmental development permit, environmentally sensitive development permit areas of 50 feet, 15 meters, where we're looking to preserve the vegetation within that more critical strip because that feeds the lake, it shades the lake, there's several, ecological processes that matter. So that's the one in between, Zach said, is not being requested here, but that would involve a bylaw.
So I think I'm familiar with this property. It's previously owned by Shimpies. And I recognize the extensive development that you're referring to. So in my eyes, or from what I've read, the reason the boathouse is proposed at that location is because there's a steep rocky cliff to the east of it. Yeah. And this gentleman and Mrs. May built an elevator from their upper deck down to area near where the boathouse is proposed.
So they're calling it funicular?
Yeah.
So because of the placement of the landing of the elevator, there's a certain angle that the boathouse needs to be at so that when the boat is on the track system, it needs to be able to clear contact with that landing. So in order to achieve that, they have to set the boathouse at a certain angle. And in doing so, it moves it to 0.2 meters from the accretion line as opposed to 2.5 meters, which is required by our bylaws. So on the first page, it says that the boathouses are exempt from both the floodplain setbacks and the flood construction levels specified in the floodplain management bylaw 2009. Provided that they are not used for habitable area. So nobody's going to live in this boathouse. And the landowner has registered a covenant in favor of the province and the regional district of Central Kootenai, which states that the deck or boathouse, in this case the boathouse, will not be used as a habitable area. So there's a separate step that they would have to take if they were permitted to do this. They would have to attach a covenant onto their title. So I understand the reasons for this. And there's a subsequent steps that they have to follow. So because of the restrictions of the cliff and the landing of the elevator, I understand why they're proposing this or asking for this variance.
So that is all about half a meter? This whole thing is about half a meter?
It's a reduction from 2.5 meters to 0.2 meters.
The other applications, environmentally sensitive development, they're all about impacting the area whatsoever. So it wouldn't matter if you were 2.5 or 0.2. The biologist is just going to say what's there. Putting it here, does this impact some critical vegetation? Putting sensitive vegetation, putting it here, is it on rock? So the other process is much more concerned about what are you impacting when you drop that there. This is interested in a very general setback requirement on lot lines.
And at this point, there's nothing there, but now they put this.
Yeah, you can see the funicular in the aerial photo.
Yeah, so it's already there.
And so they're not impacting the neighbor's side. It's
that's,
between,
yeah, I don't have any other questions. Or,
Not fine with.
yeah.
so based on our discussions, I'd like to make a motion to accept the variance that Mr. and Mrs. May have requested, allowing them to place the boathouse at 0.2 meters from the property line.
Supporting this variance kind of.
So is it a motion to support the application as submitted?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Great. Move on to the next one, shall we?
Gas station one.
Yeah. Canvo taking over everywhere. Right.
Yeah, we drive through the cameras. Canco has
Everywhere.
picked up almost everything over the Monastery.
And right at the same
Must
time,
be a transportation issue that they're just to get bulk suppliers to truck. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I'm sure it is too. I don't know. You don't know what it is either. What's kind of,
Some economic advantage.
yeah, some economic advantage.
Yes. I do appreciate it and get gas sometimes when I'm on a little lonely road like the Monastery.
And so I wasn't the development planner on this application, but if you do have questions about the zoning regulations that specify some of these signage requirements, I can try and clarify those.
This is the only one that I saw. And what I understood from looking at it when I looked at the home last week was they're simply asking for permission to put that big sign there, right?
Yeah, the sign that they've
I
designed.
say personally, they're so darn ugly that I'm not into it. But to me,
The color scheme just doesn't.
it's so,
Hey, if it's blue, gray, or black, I'm good with it.
yeah, right. Instead of all the orange, white, orange.
Sorry.
Jeez. Can we say that? Like they did in Sedona. You know, Sedona is the only McDonald's in the whole world that didn't get to do their.
The golden arches.
Yeah. They did turquoise and terracotta to blend in with the scenery. So we'll say on our east shore, we were just like gray and black. Anyway, all joking aside, yeah, as much as I'm not a big fan of it, I don't really have any legitimate
Concerns?
reasons to not support it. Sean, any questions, any comments?
Can you tell me a little bit about community heritage as a shore?
Sure. That was included in the referral package?
It's just shaded.
Oh.
Where it does include part of the property.
I can double check in the mapping why. I thought that was maybe part of the,
Original mill area.
I thought it was, what's the Dewdney Trail or something along those lines, or maybe the old, but let me just double check the mapping actually, just before I speak out of turn here.
As it stands right now, there's nothing really there, is there? Not?
And then my other question was, the blue delineation, is that the property owner?
Let me just go to that page of the referral package.
There's quite a bit of land.
Yeah,
Gas station is on very.
it's quite an odd shaped parcel, and it looks like there's actually like a return to crown portion for Duck Creek that may flow through the property. So maybe previously when this property was subdivided or created through a subdivision process, the Ministry of Transportation may have asked for that dedication, like essentially an allowance for the creek channel. And that's why it has that kind of two components and weird shape to it.
It looks like a lot of the parking area, even the propane tanks and stuff are actually outside of the property line. So is that something that's been grandfathered in? There's no permit required for that?
Photos are is that you thinking from the photos?
Yes.
They can be inaccurate because when you take all the grids of the province put together, they start working here and overlap everything. There's a combined scale factor that has to be applied that can shift everything a few meters. Something I have to deal with airports because runways are so long. You have a 12,000 foot runway if it's up at 5,000 foot elevation.
This whole thing's probably shifted down, so that those
Right.
structures are.
Yeah, because not all of this has been adjusted, using this proper combined scale factor, starting in the corner where these were all laid out for Kootenai District, and you start making those little adjustments at 0.9999273, whatever the number is, and everything moves over,
Couple meters, it's quite easy.
potentially a few meters from the imagery. And our staff, I don't know, why is GIS doing that with everything?
It's a huge undertaking to try and correct it all. But yeah, Director Jackman kind of identified it as the aerial photos are not always properly geo-referenced with our parcel fabric, so oftentimes it can appear like it's way off.
And that's why there's a big disclaimer on RDCK public foot. You can access it and says, this isn't gospel.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just because I know that gas station stuff.
Right, okay. Because that really questions about the heritage question.
And just
What does
back,
that mean?
so back to Sean's original question, that pink outline that shows up in the mapping is actually based on the historic alignment of the Dewdney Trail. So there's a statement of significance that's available on our website that kind of goes over kind of the values associated with the Dewdney Trail and why it's on our inventory. I don't know if there's actually a remaining section of the trail. Like I know in other parts of the regional district, there's actually still footpaths and trails that exist that you can hike on and use or bike on. I feel like it's more of a rail corridor in this specific portion.
It's right there.
Yeah.
It doesn't show from the extent what's here and here of it.
I can show you on my map how far it extends in both directions. Do you have it?
Well, I've got it.
Register. What about it is heritage?
So see the railway right away is the darker purple,
Yeah.
and then the heritage, the broader pink, is probably maybe because the Dewdney Trail wasn't very well defined. I know in some areas you define a railway as given a charter, you go from here to here, you go 1 mile. Like you can move the rails around. So this is where the CP runs now, right through there.
Yeah, it's almost like the rail line does follow the historic alignment of the Dewdney Trail through this area.
But they don't have that as their title of property. It's not, the whole width of the Dewdney Trail doesn't belong to CPR.
Yeah. And I think there is some form of a buffer established on either side of where this old trail alignment would have been. I would just have to defer to the planner because they probably looked at this in a little bit more detail when they were preparing the referral package. And I didn't do a site visit or anything, so I'm not familiar with if there is actually any remaining trail or footpath left from the original Dewdney Trail itself.
Not there. There's paths above, but they were cart tracks for agricultural to bring stuff down the hill. I don't think along that edge.
Right.
Between the railway and the highway, you've got almost nothing in some areas.
And yet there's this huge chunk that's, that's like a boot. It's like the whole boot part is in that
Yeah.
heritage area. And so what does that mean when the property was bought? Like, does it say anywhere in?
Well, generally, it's just a flag for us, like when we're doing the review of these applications, to take a deeper look at what heritage feature is being identified. Is there a potential impact on it? It's not to say that there's actually like regulation that we are bound to because a portion of the property is within that buffer area of the heritage resource.
With gas, tanks and pumps and, yeah, anyway, yeah, I was curious about that whole designation.
It's just basically, like you said, it's a flag to see, is there anything being impacted that's got heritage status or heritage
Yeah,
importance or anything that could be altered by whatever is being applied for?
yeah, and I think that if this was a vacant property and we were considering new development, there would maybe be more concern, but because, like you said, there's infrastructure there, there's tanks in the ground, there's signage. I don't know how the planner is looking at that component of the review. I think it's a good question, but I don't have a specific answer in terms of is the Dudney Trail still present in this area, and is there a heritage resource worthy of some type of protection? Or
If it was going to be restored, the status to miss the boat, because the actual Trans-Canada Trail is right over there. It went over from Kimberley, over the Great Creek Pass and then head north. So this was considered for the Trans-Canada Trail.
So this variance permit has essentially 5 components to it. One is regarding setback, and we've got the floor regarding size. So I think you should go through this sequentially. Maybe talk about the setback first. So regarding the setback, under the community land use bylaws, the number of signs permissible is 1 for each public road access. So this has 2 public road accesses. So they're proposing that there be 3 signs. 1 freestanding, 1 on the fascia, and 1 on the roof. So they're existing, and they're proposing to change the corporate logo. So I said we were going to start with a setback, so I guess one of the signs is right on the property line. It looks like, or because they're going to use the existing pole, right, the one that has the gas price on it, that it looks like it's on the property line. So they want us to sign off on that or give our approval or support that sign remain there and just have the logos changed and some information out.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. You're not disrupting anything, you're just putting the new colors. It's a little bigger, it looks like.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, as far as size goes, the existing one is 5 square meters, and they're proposing to add a little bit of detail to the sign, which would increase its size to 6.3 meters.
Right, they put those 2 extra little categories at the bottom of the sign.
Yeah, so as far as that actual request for variances, I'm okay with that one. Don't need to change the location of the signage, and a slight increase would be fine by me, I think.
And then what were the others?
So then, I have one more question before we move on. The signs on the pumps don't pertain to this. Those are,
There's replacement of pumps, right?
well, I'll just, so there's no comments, but this stuff on the side, on the pumps themselves. And this is what is there. If you ever got, so they're proposing a lot of corporate logo all over this property.
so is your question whether those kind of light stands are also considered signs as well?
Some sort of acceptance of that, to proceed with that. Because that doesn't look like it's part of the variance.
That's a good question. I mean, it is their logo branded on like the light post. I don't know if the planner considered those kind of individual Canco logos as supplemental signs to the 3, I think, that were identified as variances. I can note that question, but I just don't have them here to kind of bounce this off of, and I'm not sure if they considered that.
So I would imagine that those are permissible, but so what that ignites for me is how much other signage is necessary. So we've kind of already talked about the size of the sign and the location of the main sign being on the property line and allowing it to be increased slightly. But it kind of,
I was going to say, there is a bit of a clause in here, though, like under the comprehensive land use bylaw, signs associated with the operation of on-site businesses and activities such as parking, loading, vehicle movement, employee and visitor safety, and other similar signs are exempt from the requirements of 83 and 84. 83 is the setback, and 84 has the one sign for each public access road. So I wonder if some of the signs that say it's operational because then it's crystal clear, that's where you have to be to pump your gas.
and
That's how it's, so are they operational?
They're exempt from it, so I get that.
Yeah, I think that's why that kind of clause is there, so that it's crystal clear where you need your vehicle to be to, as opposed to parking only.
Please send me the plastic bag and packaging.
Trying to find what the next sign is.
Is the one on the building?
Okay, if we talk about that one, it looks like,
Looks like there isn't one now, and they want to put one above the doors.
so that one there looks like 18.84 CT. The maximum width, they want to be 2.5 meters.
Yeah.
Which translates to 8'2". And, okay, so the existing is 8'2", or not even there.
No, there isn't even one there.
But they are proposing to make it 18 feet wide.
Which is much bigger than, is the total, what's his total area in square meters? It says 6 square meters total, 2.5 square meters width. Is it at the total,
Say that again there.
the maximum 2.5 meters wide, but also maximum 6 square meters? So it could be 2.5 by 2.3 or 4. What is the height of this? The one on the building is not as high though. But I don't know if the total area is way bigger than 6 square meters. I think that might be what you want to focus on. I think it's-
Well, with the total width of it being 5.5 meters, and it's probably going to exceed a foot. So that it would exceed the 6 meters. So when I read this, I put no to that, just because I felt like there isn't a sign there, they're going to place a sign, but we're not fall within the parameters of the bylaw. That's how I felt about that. So I mean, it's not like they're utilizing the same pole. In this case, they're using the fascia, but there isn't a sign there. So why can't the new sign that they put up just comply? That's how I feel about that. And like I said, like I'm basing that on all this other logo that's going to be around the property.
It's like, how many levels do you need? There's nothing blocking it to make it around the road. Oh,
This one though doesn't say, I mean, it's got the flag, the maple leaf, but it says one stop your neighborhood store.
To me, it's just drawing people towards the entrance.
Yeah. Yeah, they could just paint around the door red. Match the color scheme and then leave the rest of it. But anyway, yeah, they just really want to be splashy. You want to make it splash.
In regards to the sign that's on the property line too, just to be clear, they're increasing the heights. So it's going to increase in height, but the whole of the sign is going to remain the same. But it's going from a total height of 5 meters, which is 16.5 feet, to 6.3 meters, which is almost 21 feet. So we're gaining about 5 feet in height to increase, to display the guide diesel and ATM indicators. So again, I think I agree that we're in support of that being fine. So now it's the sign on the building itself that I feel should just comply. So I would kind of object to that and not support that.
Michelle.
Which regulation did they not comply with for the The one on the building?
The
Well,
measurement.
signs in general should be APHC, a maximum of 2.5 meter width,
Right,
whereas this is a banner.
yeah.
It's a sentence
And
instead
also-
of.
So it complies with like the area, but it doesn't comply with the
That's
overall.
what's either outside the area.
That's what the area is, 6 square meters, but what they're proposing is, 9 square meters.
I thought it was 5.5 times 0.9,
Yeah, me too.
that one. The one on the building.
Yeah, 5.5 times 0.9.
So it would be under the area.
It would be under the 6 meters, but you're right that the width would be it would be exceeding the width.
Lastly there, straight lines. So on the variance permit application, I'm looking at 18.84 feet for the maximum area permitted currently 6 meters, and they're proposing it become 9 meters. So rather than it be like a 2 meter by 2 meter square, or where was the 2.5 meter that you were?
I was referring to the one on the actual building when I said it was 0.9 by 5.5 for the fascia sign, but I think for that size variance, I think they're referring to the freestanding one with the gas prices on it. I think that's the one that's actually going to be, 9.03 meters for the freestanding sign.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so you did say yes. So now, regarding that freestanding sign, to be clear, it's on the property line. We agreed that it can be higher than 5 meters. It's going to be a total of 6.2 meters, and also that the maximum area can be increased from 6 square inches to 9 meters. So we're all in favor of that. Is that how we feel?
The freestanding one, yeah.
So just a note on the freestanding, highways might say something else.
Right.
Highways has restrictions on the how robust the base is. If you hit something big enough, that's it, dead stop. They may require a setback. The engineer who will have to look at this, I've done a few signs. When you take the wind load of the little bigger sail up a little higher, the base may be totally inadequate. This may be a moot point. Like the one for Pyramid, there's a massive concrete block under that. I've done a few other ones. One that didn't get built because Kevin Galloway passed away was going to be a stagecoach at one of the businesses. That was a heavy sign as well. So there's other people that have to look at the location of that sign to the highway and if that old base is structurally adequate. So that goes beyond.
And what it's made from.
Yeah,
They may suggest like a barricade here or something.
all of it's good,
High
but
wires.
no. Anyway, no, guy wires are bad. They're having parking lots.
Okay.
Good way to knock the sign down. The guy wire on it. Sorry.
Okay, so 18.83, 18.84, 18.84B, we're fine with the variance regarding those.
Yeah, so what was the one in the building?
So now that's the next one. So
That's C.
rather than the club, the maximum width be 2.5 meters, which is 8.2 feet, they're proposing that this be 18 feet. So they want it to be 10 feet wider
Narrower.
than typical signs that are allowed in the area. So, like I said, it's just, if you look at the sign itself, what does this red and this red really provide you with? How necessary is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Corporate identity.
Yeah,
So I think they,
branding.
I don't think it's necessary. I think, like I said, they're just drawing people to the entrance.
Mhm.
So I think they can, even if they want that red on either side, if that's something that's mandated by their franchise or whatever, they can just shorten up the one stop logo in the center. But in my eyes, that's a new sign. I would like to see them comply. So,
He's right that it's too wide, yeah.
'Cause
Yeah, 3 meters wider than that's the maximum.
And right now, there's no sign up there.
and there's a logo everywhere else on the pumps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay, so we need to hear that, Sean, that sounds good.
Well, we've got to make a motion for all this, I think, but, so that was the fourth point,
Yeah, so we support the first three.
and then, and not fourth point, but let's talk about the fifth point, which is,
The one on the roof? So on the roof, you got the fencing.
This is another one in additional to that.
so if you read 18.84D, signs shall be limited to one sign for each public road access. So there's two at this property. So signs shall be limited to one sign for each public road access, plus one additional sign for the property. So this is where they're requesting that sign on the roof be allowed, in addition to the one on the fascia, the one near the road, the big one. So my 2 cents for this is that this rooftop sign isn't necessary. So we've agreed that the one on the property line can say, we've agreed that the one on the fascia can say, as long as it falls within the size parameters. So we've already agreed to 2. They're asking for the third one, and the third one would be this roof sign. And in my mind, it's not necessary again. So I would
Not support.
I would not support the project.
So just,
Okay, that's necessary.
so just to recap, to try and get like a simplified recommendation down, would it be support for, and I'm just looking back at the front page of the referral package, support for the first 3 variances, not support for increasing the width of the fascia sign, and then not support for the additional sign that they're asking for? Okay.
Sure. That sounds good to me.
Can I just state the sections that we're supporting?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that regarding this development permit application for variance, we are in support of 18.83, 18.84A, 18.84B. However, we are not in support of 18.84C because we feel the size is excessive and not necessary. And we are not in support of 18.84D because we feel that 2 signs is sufficient for this property and that third is not required.
I think you provided rationale for not supporting item 884C as well.
So the rationale for not supporting 18.84D is that because we have already supported one sign for each public road access, and because there's no third access, we don't feel that the third sign is necessary. That's a word statement that
I'll try and simplify it here.
I'm trusting you.
It's overkill. They can get one of those blow up things, you know, that sway.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
It's not a huge site. I'm just thinking of some of the chemical sites and stuff, some of them are a lot bigger.
They are. I've seen the small ones, big ones, are really obvious going back.
Is it the one that says it was on the Alpha Ferry Landing?
The what?
Alpha Ferry Landing, is that now?
It is. It is. When did that happen? I just noticed it last time I went over.
It's been there for a while.
Yeah. Not that long though, hey? Maybe this spring?
Maybe in the spring. We will,
I don't know any of that often.
Do you want me to just read back the recommendation to you, everyone, just to make sure I kind of captured it? And if there is any more rationale you want to just add in, just let me know. So I just wrote down recommendation to support variances to sections 18.83, 18.84A, 18.84B, however, not in support of 18.84C and not in support of 18.84D, because they already have 2 signs, which is in accordance with the zoning bylaw regulations.
An 8.4C is just that, not in support of to stay within the parameters.
Right.
Right?
Looks like the community notice board is allowed. They don't have to apply for anything regarding that. Mostly board.
I don't think so. No, I don't think that would be considered signage.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever come up, but I can.
It was just included in our package, right?
Yeah.
And I was just wondering why. I mean, I think it's great.
Yeah.
We had a lot of ones is,
Yeah, we will lose that. Keep the community board.
Yeah, I don't think we would consider, because that would just be like a cork board, right? Like something that things can be added and removed. Yeah, I don't think that would fall under the sign, because it's not a commercial sign, like to me at least. I wouldn't be interpreting that as a sign.
Hopefully they'll take it.
how we get for time.
3:30, so I think we're in great shape to tackle that last. Well,
That's good.
but yeah, I think we can proceed to item 5 point, or sorry, it was new business 6.1.
Yeah.
You just synopsis on that.
Is this my fault?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Look how many pages this is. Committee report.
that is,
It's a good school.
that is a tiny snippet. If you were to go to, oh, quite seriously, let me go to RDCK describe.
Well, I think the digital package, like the agenda that would have been circulated, did include Nelson's entire
All of the
report.
attachments.
It ended with the summary of applications and referrals, so maybe not all the attachments.
Well, it's looking fast and it's down the bottom end, so it'll be easy to find.
So is there only one hard copy of this one?
Is this the one that you let me look at?
I think Sean printed that one off, yeah.
You printed it off, okay. So I can look online.
Okay, so, we've got, oh, no, I opened the wrong one, of course. We have, 4 planning positions, a manager planning, 1 planning position vacant. I don't know if anyone else is coming in right now, and then the planning department has some other support. And you get the numbers all the time. I could quote exactly how many hundreds of applications for this, that, and the other thing come through every year. It's quite a lot. The way the regional districts evolved, because we're not a city, you don't have everything the same for everybody, or everybody's locked into zones and stuff like that. We have a lot of areas that have community plans, say, like right here in those zoning. We have areas with community plan and zoning. We have areas that used to be called the rural planning bylaw that are now being converted to more modern language. We have everything in between. Good examples of the weakness, and we'll start with weakness, strong strength, which you can say, well, we're unique, we're special, we want our own words, our own way to do stuff, and on and on, right? However, the world doesn't always roll that way. So the province decided about a year ago exactly to say, you're going to change all your community plans by June 30th, and you do this and this, and then you're going to change all your zoning, match that. Now, I heard 2 party leaders speak on Thursday and then Friday that for all we know, they might get changed back in a month and a half. Like literally, this is how the world rolls.
The zoning might get changed back? Or
Any government can repeal a bill, they can amend a bill, they can add to it, they can do what they want. Because what we are allowed to do is under provincial legislation as local government. Now, as things change, and they continually change, on top of that, we have, quasi-judicial bodies like Agricultural Land Commission. They're driven by policy and act that's set up by the provincial government. That changes every couple of years. There's been a serious amendment. And when they change, we change everything that we have that overlaps to match that. Because we must. We're not told to be there and not do it. Yeah, there's some real challenges to keeping up with paperwork, documentation, and that business side of the life, which keeps a couple of our planners busy pretty much full time, I'd say, with sort of the projects. So conversations keep coming. Is there a better way to do this? We have 11 electoral areas, with a whole bunch of different language to achieve essentially the same thing, a similar thing everywhere. People want some sense of identity. People can ask for more restrictive or more definitive land use regulations for the zoning. They can ask for that, like Boswell did. And they can receive that, or you're standing outside of that. But two of us are in that, two of you aren't right now. But the way we go about it has, and trying to have really good involvement of the public and conversations and the like, is taking a horrific amount of time because of all these ideas spinning around, all these words spinning around, all these meetings, all this clarification. So let's take a really simple thing. We used to have something called single-family residential. We're not even allowed to use that word anymore. It's not a word. It's not a term. What's it called now?
Single detached dwelling, I think.
Single detached dwelling. Is there a difference? In your mind, it may not be. To me, is it housing? And I don't care if you got lots of land and you can service it, you got water, and manage the septic. Have 5 houses, but not on the property line so that your neighbors have to look at whatever you decide to paint your house, whatever color. So you say, I'm not too invested in whether it's R1 or 2 or 3 or 4, exactly how big your lot is, whether or not your grandfather you wouldn't meet your non-conforming. I don't really care about that so much. I just care more that this is residential, it's not commercial. This isn't a gravel operation. We don't want something to go on for 3 to 6 years that the neighbors didn't buy into when they said, yeah, we'll go for zoning. And now all of a sudden something else happens. So there's reasons for having sets of rules that people want, don't want, and exactly what you call it, the technical language, definition, some of it fixed by the government. I don't care about it. I just care about the general intent. So this is getting to a conversation we've been having within the rural committee with all the planning staff. Are there better ways to go? And also looking ahead to what the province could require, because they have now required much more forward-looking housing plans. We weren't required to do a 5-year housing plan or strategy until not too long ago. Now we had to do it. Now we're doing it for 10 to 20-year intervals. And we're looking at housing in Nelson, how that interacts with ZFGH, how Creston, housing interact with ABC. We have to be a little more aware of all these things. We're being told to do this. Everything we do with all of these different documents, all of these different levels of input, all of these different reviews is not getting easier. So could there be an easier way to go? Something I'm very interested in is, on top of that, we are being hinted that we may be required to do a regional growth strategy. We've been given money to do research, we have to pretty well do, to identify where do we have servicing potential, where do we have transit or potential for transit, where do we have water, not have water. So these are things where, I'm not exactly in these colleagues are busy doing all this stuff. Because this is a direction under a government of the day that could change to have kind of this more regional growth strategy. Again, setting back, is there a better way to do this? Because we're all over the map. Every time we change something, if I scroll through the documents here, they all have the same words, they're just in different orders. So the one good workshop we had, we talked about this regional growth strategy. Well, who has done it? Somebody done it. So we got a group, Skeleton Valley. Mm-hmm. They said, okay, well, here's what we did. We took a model where we have a regional growth strategy, at least you're aware of what cities are doing. And something happens in a city. Nelson is now not allowed to do certain things. Kamloops and Kelowna very much in terms of short-term rentals to encourage long-term rentals. When their short-term rental rules change, that impacts the neighborhood immediately outside. It's not as if, people say, I live in Nelson, I live in the boundaries of Nelson. When they say I live in Nelson, I mean, I can get to Nelson in 20 minutes, right? So obviously, we have to be aware of the regional issues. Okay. We have zoning in so many places, and I don't think we're going to repeal zoning anywhere. Whether or not we absolutely have to have official community plans or not, I'm saying we kind of do when I read, the way I read Local Government Act, we don't have. So there's a lot of things imposed that are very difficult to manage when all the documents are mishmashed. The words are different, definitions are different, until the government says change the definition in all of them. So the template we looked at was have an area, local area plan, which would be the Grey Creek conversation, or the Boswell conversation, or the Windell conversation. The Windell conversations I was involved in, they said, hey, we want town. Then some people said, well, you can't look after your roads, have to do this, have to do that. Well, if you do that, it takes so much money, and you can't subdivide to raise your tax base unless you can manage the septage. And water table's high, and that's not works, and now you need a sewage treatment plant, you need sewage, but water lines. Yeah, it was a good conversation. I've gone through it twice. That was a local area plan. It wasn't in the regional district. It was driven by the province. But that's, to me, what the local area conversation should have been. Are they going to transform? There's drive-up LC homes around the back. There's all these 5-acre lots, some bigger, some a little smaller. Almost no active agriculture or farming. They've admitted their bedroom community. But they didn't want to give up 5-acre lots. They didn't want to have a sewage system. So they didn't change. 2 OCP reviews I've seen with Wendell, they said, no, we're good enough. That was a good local area conversation. Grey Creek had a huge conversation here about what's different. Grey Creek was the last one in this OCP to come up with their little community definition sections to say, no, we're not looking at a property store. We're not looking at this. We're not looking at that. We don't want big RV sites. We want kind of what you had.
When was that?
2013.
15 years ago.
I think 2013.
7 years ago. 11 years ago. So the local area plan to me is where to have a conversation. To me, you don't have to say it's got to be all of area A. Because half area is not interested. I would say the next one is going to be really interested in Greenville. Because you see all kinds of stuff. You know, you don't see some of this stuff. You'll see some stuff. I see all kinds of stuff. Well, neighbors want this, others want that. Let them have that conversation. Have a local area plan. That local area plan, if we update it discreetly, would fit into the official community plan. So in Grey Creek, you may not be too bothered with how that reads, or somewhere else you may not be too bothered. One of it might be curious. Then the official community plan, well, you'd say, well, what's the point of that? That's the document that captures all those community directions.
So you're talking about harmonizing the OCP for the whole area.
I don't want to use 4-letter words, but it would capture the individual comments and desires and growth patterns for these communities in a document we can manage technically, plug pieces in. And when the province says change this, we see what's R2 here and R2 there and R2 here are all different. The permissible size of an accessory building is different. The setback here and there is different. You can choose numbers that are maybe thrown in the dark, somewhat arbitrary, maybe not what you had last week, but they're all variable. That's why you have variance processes. That's why you guys are sitting here. But if you pick a framework that is fairly uniform and ask professionals to put those words and definitions in there, and then as amateurs, all of us, format what our community's visions are. And property day, sure, they'd love to sweep away some of the LR, and that was Lionel's property, a little more commercial. It's happening haphazard now. It's totally disorganized. But yeah, property day could be a fairly decent little commercial hub. I appreciate not having to run to the Balfour Super. I'll wait till I'm on the other side. They wait so you can get off this ferry so you can get in there and buy your groceries, right? Those are community, local area plan plans. The OCP that ends up needing to fit with the government regulations, I would personally like to see a little more uniform, consistent, so that we can manage the process more easily. The expectations for me would not to be to ever update an Area A OCP. It's just an OCP with a bunch of definitions that look so similar to the ones that are there now. And if we as communities say we need to have a conversation about Boswell, or part of Boswell, that these sort of vacation getaway lonely little strips all of a sudden have equipment digging 24/7 up the hillside. You can't, Mining Act doesn't allow you to do 24/7. But that's a local thing. Are we going to lean into that? Or are we going to be worried about trigger words that I look at as efficiency? everybody tells me every year spend less money. Yeah, okay, we won't staff the vacant position until Dana gets back, right? And so these guys won't get stuff done. That's part of putting this report there. There are huge numbers of fairly major projects that are not things that, oh, let's do this. It's in response to stuff we have to do. If there's a piece of it we can simplify, why don't we simplify that? Not look at it as putting everyone in a 15-minute city, because none of us live there and never will. I might. I'll be in a rest home someday, I guess. But I want this conversation to start in community. If there's something we're afraid of or apprehensive about, let's talk about why or what. Where do we draw the lines between the content of our local area plans and not the fixed, but the uniform or harmonized language that fits with the provincial stuff, so that when provincial government changes, the words change, it's all changed in one stroke. You might care if those words change. I don't, because ideologically I just let some stuff wash past it. I'm not going to change the way some people think and act. I will have an influence maybe on friends and family, and I'm good with that. And some things the province do, if we think they're so egregious, we don't always, is being recorded, we don't always follow it. And you saw several cities saying they weren't going to follow Bill 44. Now they have said they will. I know what the backroom conversations are. I just want to have a simplified process where I can focus with each community pocket on what matters and not worry about all the other language, unless it's so egregious, as they say, that then we're going to put our foot down.
So where is the regional conversation then since that June or July, was it end of June, the deadline for the OCP?
Okay, 4 of us 11 directors, my words were, I'm going to take a leap of faith and ask that all of the amendments that Dana recommended, 200 and some, and we sat here and you guys, without faulting you for a second, said, wow, how do we understand these 200 amendments to all of these different OCPs, whatever ones were specific to Area A, of course, were more limited. I said, I'm taking a leap of faith because I don't see the value in fighting the provincial government at that level, a lot of definition changes and stuff. So 4 of the 11 electoral areas were in compliance in June, and all the rest said, yeah, in July. We have relented the language change. Massaging.
Sorry,
4 of the 11 electoral area directors said, go ahead and we did third reading and adopted the changes. The staff said, this is how we think will fit, yes, OCP by OCP. Here's how we think we can conform so the province isn't looking at us anymore until the next time. And the other 7 electoral area directors all said the same thing a month later. They were too apprehensive from June 30th and the June to say, let's go ahead. Now we're looking for the things we have to change by zoning is December 31st, 2025. And we're going to do all the housing before then. Housing is now.
Yeah, I think we kind of did the housing piece a little bit in reverse. Like we changed the zoning first, recognizing that was an easier thing to kind of chew off. Yeah. And then we'll go back and kind of bring the OCPs into conformity by that date that you mentioned, I think.
So sorry, that's correct. Yeah, we flipped it because they said change the zoning, not all zoning. So it wasn't all 11 of us. It was bizarre, the process. They said, do this. So we've done that. I don't want to wait for the next few times when the province says, now do this, now do this. I want to have simpler documents. All the professional language that makes sense, that follows what we're being led to do this and this. Okay, fine, just put that language there. And then everything that we have a decision on in community, let's start doing these local area plans. Now, this structure, with what we've seen they've done on the island, when you put all these pieces together, that was the regional growth strategy. Because each community had enough of a meaningful, had sufficiently meaningful content that you could see where the growth was going to be Crawford Day, Preston, Nelson, Castlegar, but it was not going to be Sir, that kind of stuff. I think we've become obvious if we use that structure. Right now, what we have, I have to change. We go to the OCP now and you start reading the community descriptions. I don't know if you've read them lately. They're fairly light duty, okay? And maybe they'll stay light duty until you really want to change something. So you want to make a move. If, let's say Greenville says, no, we want to do something. We want to put a sewer system in Greenville and up the game. But it can't really densify unless they go multi-family dwellings, but that kind of thing, right? And you see this. I mean, Naramata, Tina and I talked about living in Naramata once. You see some places that not what they were 20 or 30 years ago. I want us to think about what makes us apprehensive, what makes us hesitant to try and be efficient, and where do we really want to make statements as to who and what we are, community by community. And is there a better way to do that? Whether or not you guys have an opinion or talk to your neighbors about it, we're having it every month, every couple months. We're going to have to make decisions. We're going to do this or that. We're going to plan another workshop. I don't know if Nelson's got a framework for that yet or not. I'm going to leave him alone until, I think he has till November, his boss. That's boss. But we're going to have to change something. The way it looks now, it's like I don't know what it is.
Smorgasbord?
Smorgasbord. You get something like $1.7 million estimated over the next decade in some to update our plans. The rate we're going. Just the community meetings and all the conversation, everybody looking at all the words, top to bottom, all different. It's a massive amount of money.
And there's just not the resources staff-wise to do these projects and do all the required public consultation.
Sure, we'll hire more people and or consultants and we'll pay for it through taxation. Or we'll become more efficient.
So I'm just going to say it out loud. Like the government in general at all levels is so inefficient, it actually is unbelievable. And I've heard all of you at different meetings and over the decades I've been at meetings talk about the bureaucracy, the ridiculousness of it. So on the one hand, I hear what you're saying. And on the other hand, experientially, what I see is a lot of waste and a lot of poor decision making and a lot of pseudo community engagement. And so I'm speaking as sort of a broad brushstroke here based on, like, I don't know if I can get specific about what my actual concerns are without, going into it and looking at it and so on. And I know that a lot of people have concerns, and that's, like that smorgasbord, we've got all these different areas with all their different things. Some, area kind of has like a half OCP. Yep. Other ones have ones that were updated. I think here was 2013 was the last one. And so I get that. Again, just speaking, I think what we're seeing coming down federally and provincially and so on, where a lot of people are concerned, is higher taxation. I mean, you've got 30% of Canadians are hired, are government employees across Canada, right? That's a lot of employees. So this is why I like being at a local level. Sounds the same as you, because I actually feel like there's more potential for actually being more concerned about our own environment. But there's no question that, again, I'll just make kind of a generalized statement here. People are concerned about these higher taxations, all these new positions, all these things that are happening. And then you're saying, okay, we're getting all these documentations done, but then in a year, the province can say, oh, now we want something different. We have a different government. Oh, now we have to redo this. And it's just like the inefficiency of it. It's just, I would say if I was to simplify it, that is probably one of the main complaints of the average taxpayer. It's like, what are we paying for now? What is this? How does this affect me? What is actually happening? Like, it's become so convoluted on so many levels that sometimes it's hard to not think, is it being made overcomplicated so the average person can't really understand what's going on?
Or the average elected person. So we're not going to simplify everything. Part of our spending problem is people want something. They want more hours in the pool. They want more sheets of ice for curling. They want an indoor pool.
Sure, we don't have.
And those things you get to vote on
Mhm.
and say yes or
We don't
no.
have a pool here.
No, and you're not paying for Crescent Rec.
I know
I don't think we have been asked to pay for Crescent Rec Complex.
Uh-huh.
It's my 5th term. Every term the conversation comes
Yes,
up.
and I appreciate that.
And I've talked about it probably for a few weeks. And every time it comes up, I say wall to wall. Let's go wall to wall. You fix all these halls, do everything these communities want, all their halls, have paid programming staff sitting here to welcome people, to clean up the beach instead of volunteers doing all the work.
Uh-huh.
Then maybe we'll pay for the Crescent Rec Complex. Right now, go up to Customer Creek, they do pay for Crescent Rec Complex, whether they use it or not. A lot of our taxation, you look at our financial statement, is voluntary. Even fire services is voluntary. West Crescent just voted down the borrower to complete their fire audit. So they voted down fire protection.
What was it they voted down?
Voted down the referendum to borrow the, I don't know, the 1.9 million or something. They voted down the referendum because local government doesn't maybe have the power you might think city banks over has. Regional districts do not have that. So they voted it down. So the voluntary stuff that's on the tax bill is a big piece of it in total. The mandatory stuff, we were told we must manage waste. The consortium, the monopoly, Saxon did not want to go here. The consortium, because of time, the consortium has a monopoly for recycling, multi-material recycling, or RUC, has proposed its new 5-year plan to the provincial government. Our analysis of it was our 12 negotiating court depots you reduced to 7. So they'll take away about half of the funding that's paid for through the eco fee when anything you buy that's packaging, the wrapper, the little cardboard boxes, the fee. They want to take away almost half of the money that we get in the share of that, saying, oh, we're getting too high a level of service for recycling. It's mandatory. We have to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to manage the waste, residual waste. We have to follow federal provincial guidelines. And now the consortium that does all of its main business in lower mainland high population areas meets all their targets every year. Doesn't have to worry about us, so now they're trying to squeeze us. So yes, as our Minister of the Environment last week and said once again that him and his senior staff do not keep squeezing us. They said staff has a very good report, Amy Wilson, with all the ramifications for us here. But when you talk about tax and service and efficiency, some of it's voluntary, and some of it, like waste, is involuntary. We're told to manage it, and if it ends up dumped in the hillsides, then we get into interface little conversation with provincial authorities. So this is something that we can make a choice of how we manage this documentation. We get to choose so far how we manage all the stuff Zach and his colleagues have to deal with. Today, we can make some choices. The government gifted us $829,000 in the last year or so to manage parts of these. They do these things. So they gifted us, not your own money.
Yeah.
Provincial taxes are the
Yes,
same water.
don't get it, our money.
Yeah, that's why I said gifted. So you can see this isn't a small thing. The province realizes how big a shift they're pushing on us. This isn't the end of the shifts. So while we're in this transition, is there a way to do this better? Yes, whether you use 4-letter words like harmonization or some kind of uniformity or some templates or whatever you want to call it. But the professional words, that they know exactly what the Act defines everything as. All those professional words are done by professionals. And all the community desires, all the things we want, instead of, community engagement is too broad sometimes. Having just so many meetings on climate action, your head spins trying to absorb everything. There's probably thousands of pages of information I've read on that topic in the last, so I'm not exaggerating.
Mm-hmm.
So can we zero in to our local conversations where it makes sense, standardize, harmonize, uniform, whatever we're going to do, some of it, so that we're only worried about the pieces that matter to the community. We plug it into the other one. That's the conversation on the break. And just the reason that this 9 pages or whatever is here, these are just some of the projects staff is working on that are all kind of complicated. And you guys are voices to talk to community. Say whatever you want, don't have to say it to me. If other people say it to me, I'll hear it. I'm always listening.
Okay, so I guess my question here is on what you're talking about. Is there going to be community engagement that's initiated from the RDCK?
If we go to a
harmonizes.
Sub-regional is called person. I can't see us working this across 11 electoral areas and 9 municipalities. We had the same words for areas A, C, and B, A, B, and C for the comprehensive land use bylaw. It was the same set of words, and the difference was the community descriptions. And then Director Kettle said, no, I don't like these words. I don't like those words. Didn't mean his community didn't like those words, but all of a sudden we're all 3 separate, reviewed separately. We can't match them together without a conversation. If we're going to do that kind of amendment, we need conversation. So we're going to do all 3 separately. We're going to try and do them together. And the separate parts would be the individual local plans and conversations. And if that worked, who knows, maybe E, F, G, H, whoever, maybe not H South, would actually agree on a common set of words for themselves. Maybe not.
So you're talking about standardizing, unifying, whatever, the OCP overall, but having like kind of subsections for
Collaborative plans.
Right.
And it's been done. Cowichan seems to, they took like 6-7 years. We had their planning people. This isn't something that happened in a year.
No.
Well, even the idea that A, B, and C was one OCP.
We were, and then political.
Yeah.
I got along with everybody. I'm the last guy standing over the 5 elections from when I started. The different directors in other areas and different mayors and councils.
And Towns is still in there.
No, in the ABC crest.
Oh, ABC.
I've never seen such huge friction. We couldn't have had a common document. It's just, for some reason, all blew up, and then all the reviews are separate, all the meetings, everything's separate.
Should I have to read?
Yes.
Can I take this copy of the committee report?
For sure. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, it's available on our website and everything.
We need to look at it on page.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say before you go?
No, I would like to have more of a conversation about what a general OCP would look like for the region, and then I would want to know how that manifests on our little community, because I think that's the bigger conversation, is how does what we want to do over here really have anything to do with, I think it's a general feeling.
Or would A, B, and C make more sense? And then our fringe plan is Crescent. The big one. I mean, I've always.
Winter coming.
Yeah.
Meetings.
What I can say is, like, working at the RDCK and for 4 years or so now, the similarities in the OCPs is, it really raises the question of, like, why are there so many separate land use planning documents? If you read the agricultural section of Area K and the agricultural section of Area E or G or B or C, like ABC is kind of unique because ALR and Creston Valley, it's a very important agricultural hub. But the similarities, it really raises the question, does it warrant the amount of consultation and staff time and resources to develop these individual plans?
And I hear this, and I guess the one big thing is I just want to clarify, so what you're kind of proposing and what's being on the table is potentially there's one OCP for all.
Or sub-regional.
Maybe it'd be 3 across the entire OCP.
Okay.
Because it may be impossible to get everybody to sit it.
I don't know.
Thanks for that.
Thanks. Okay.
See you later.
See ya.
What about, we talked about, it was last week, about R1, R2, R3, like.
Well, I wish there were less. I've gone to speeches, good talks by people who say it's residential. What's the density? What's this? What can the land support? I think it's silly the way we pretend that we're actually fixing R1, 2, 3, R4 sort of things. Because we have so many grandfathered properties. We have suburban residential in Wendell when there's no sewage system in lots of places. Yeah, I mean.
And in those cases, you kind of defer to the lot sizes of, they are consistent with R2, right? So yeah.
But the lot size doesn't mean much if it's up the hillside. You can't sort of develop it, or if it's so wet. I mean, lot size is the wrong metric as well. It's what can the land support. And with the push on housing and recognition that, maybe it'd be nice to have less people having to, 2 of Lisa's girlfriends, they're in a house in the winter because the family's owned houses aren't here. In the summer they live in tents and trailers. That's my daughter's friends, right? And I only know a couple, but I'm sure there's lots of people like that. There's no place to live until they can house sit in the wintertime. People couch surfing everywhere. We have, I drive through Dirty Cape. I take a back road, Grouse Loop Road sometimes, and go up all kinds of back roads. I call it the condominium development. They have a new expansion. There's a fifth wheel.
Near the cusp.
Real cusp. There's a fifth wheel pulled in behind all the other little trailers and campers up a long driveway. I'll take you, show you if you like. It takes 3 hours to get there. It's another unit in their condominium development. There's lots of places where that's how people live. So I would rather solve our housing things by letting people with the means, financial means, and the desire to add a unit, not be constrained by a R1, 2, or 3 number. Can your land do it? Can you afford it? Does it make sense? If it makes sense for you, and you're not impinging on the neighbors within certain setbacks, go ahead.
And would you rely on like professionals, like the professional reliance model of IHA in terms of like sewerage capacity, for example? Like would that be what it comes down to?
Professional reliance, I'm retired as of June 30th. Professional engineers can be fine if you follow your code of ethics and you don't do what people say they want to pay you. And that's with every profession. So it's a matter of policing, right? If you don't police your profession, you get opportunism. If you police your profession, you get better results. So professional reliance can be fine. Foresters have just had a heavy hit. They've got to change how they do their business in the last couple of years. That's good. They can't be swayed by their employer, which they never should have anyway, if they're professional.
You have to make a note that probably exceed yourself.
Oh, yes.
I added it in the minutes, yep.
Okay.
So, I don't know, just introducing a topic that I rant on once in a while. We're going to make some decisions in the near future. And when I say there's $829,000, some of it's earmarked pretty, it's targeted, and some of it could go and develop the kind of thing we're talking about, lean into that as opposed to something else. If we can say the reason we're using these resources and doing this work is somehow meeting these things, the province says these things, but it's meeting our longer term, redirecting, reformatting this stuff and making business easier, I'd rather spend that money on what we want to spend it on. But we need to give staff direction.
And we don't need like a recommendation on this. It's a new business item. But if there is any comments that you want me to note in the minutes, like any specific comments or feedback, I'm happy to include those.
And realize, even in little villages, less than 200 people like Silverton, there's 5 councillors. They can share and talk about anything, at any level, every few weeks. I have a board, and I do talk to my fellow directors about different things. Need better advice comes from, need relevant advice comes from community.
Mm-hmm.
The other day, this came up about how people don't have a voice. Well, we have this, we have Green Belt Commission Management, we have two this one, Green Belt Commission, 2 water advisories, Economic Development Commission,
Did you say
Rec 9, Resource Recovery doesn't have a separate. I wanted a Regional Parks and Trails 787, but that's been resisted for different reasons.
Well, one piece of feedback I'll give back from the community that I've talked to is through all that community action plan stuff, people do feel like they're heard. Like that is what some of the people are saying, like the having had the engagement. And some of the people I'm talking about are the people that were very, very upset about a lot of things. So
was this the climate action stuff? Yeah.
what did I say?
Community action plan. That's what it is.
Yeah, sorry. And contact plan. But, so, and I guess why I share that is I think that community engagement is imperative. And again, my own voice, but I feel like I do talk to a lot of different people. I think that is the number one thing that people are concerned about is these things that kind of get railroaded in without us being aware. And it is, it's something to manage. It's something to manage, to be able to include and so on. So, I will take this and talk to people. I guess I'm wondering, is there an actionable step that you're proposing here?
I want myself and my colleagues in the rural I want to have one more,
Okay.
and there's friction here as well, to a
Okay.
degree, I guess. I want to have one more conversation with rural committee, and any municipal director and board is allowed to sit in, and always invited them to have freedom of the floor and speak and ask questions, they don't just sit there. Our municipal directors want to jump into this sooner and faster, because some of this 829,000 overlaps with municipal. And we will not be merging our documents with the cities, towns, villages. We will have a distinct set of information. It's rural.
Okay.
So it's rural chair, at least for now, to the environment. When do we do that? November, December, till the fun me. As rural chair, I want to have a little more of a conversation just with the rural directors, get a sense of either apprehension or general concerns about, are we moving too fast? Can we do something regionally, sub-regionally? Who's ready, who's not ready? Then talk to the municipal with the next workshop with staff. And if it seems it's going to be inevitable to go sub-regional, then it's going to be a lot easier to manage sub-regional instead of 20. It'd be hard to have a conversation with 20 people who all know how to do it. So we're getting a sense of what makes sense. The workshop, that some of this came out of that was March or February.
Yeah, February, I think.
And so Zach's manager, Nelson White, laid back for a little while. There's, budget year end, there's stuff going on, mandatory changes that the Bill 44 required. And so Nelson White came back, the planning manager came back in July, said, well, what are we thinking? This is a little more recap of where we're at. And in August, we said, leave us alone. We're busy. And now we did give some direction. But now we're in September. We did give direction a week before we went down to Vancouver. Now we need, I think, to learn a little more about our options. And I just want to take that in isolation of community.
Okay.
So I'm chatting with a few other people.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that up, Garrett, because I do know it's on people's minds. And so maybe for the next meeting, you can give another update.
Yeah, I think not until November. You got to see if we're going to, that was the meeting times. Is this working? That's the question, I guess. But you have to do public time before we get into that. And the reason I mentioned the next meeting, staff may not have much for us until November. Because again, there are a lot of mandatory things to be done right now.
All right, Sean, anything? Okay, so Chair will call for questions from the public. So do we still have an observer online there?
Yep, there still is one person online.
Do you have anything? Do you type that in or let's ask them verbally?
That's not a bad idea.
Typing is good.
I get criticized twice chairing rural that I moved on from public time too quickly. People didn't have time to unmute. So I sort of, for the second and third and final time, unmute, speak now.
Also, because I've been online for some of these, and sometimes it's just you not hearing me verbally or whatever, so typing in the chat, I think is also a good.
I've entered it in the chat just in case they want to respond that way. Maybe we'll, like you said, sometimes it takes a minute to sort out the mic or the typing or whatever, so we can give them a few minutes, but.
For me, you should discuss our next meeting.
I think that's the next item on the, or we could we skip ahead to that item and then come back to public time maybe?
Yeah, leave it open to see if they say anything. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, at this point, we're looking at October 3rd. Do you know ahead of time if that'll work for you?
No, October 3rd.
Okay.
It's what, 18.
It's September 23rd already.
Yeah, so that's a little too soon. And Jerry said there's probably nothing coming in.
Oh yeah, we're all, oh my gosh, we're in September.
So I was thinking,
Right.
maybe let's just tentatively set a date for November 4th, Monday. The following Monday is Remembrance Day.
I lost a month. Yeah, okay, November 4th.
It's a Monday at 2 o'clock, and that's the day after the daylight savings time. However, it might change.
Right.
Yeah, So if it's set 2 p.m. local time, then it's local time,
It's local time.
which the ferry does not drive with.
Right.
The ferry changes
Yeah,
with
so you have to
specific.
pay attention.
It's a very confusing time for me.
May not be covered.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's true. But November 4th at 2 p.m. this type local time.
And then I reached out to Adam because he hasn't been able to make meetings. Is there time in the evening, some other difference? I'm just checking again. I didn't get the response.
Oh, and I meant to text him and I never did. Okay, I will. I don't think he's going to be able to.
Does he like to still be included in our dialogue or?
Well,
maybe-
there's, we could have 15 people on the APHC, and you get to see stuff that others don't get to see until they become public documents. So, I mean, other people can listen online, but you guys have a role, active role, and a voice to the board. In a way, it's unfair to have, if we have 15 people, if a lot of them only are interested once a year, it means we can't hold meetings like it's happened for a few months. Because not having quorum, because quorum is 50% plus one. So if people are on,
50%, it's
plus
not
one.
just 3 people.
no, so the more people you have,
Then the more
if they don't
people
show up, you
need.
need more people to meet quorum. So people should be active participants, because it impacts everybody else who shows up. Maybe schedules your work travel.
Okay.
It impacts everybody. So I've asked if now is the right time or not for him to participate. You can check off something.
Actually, I will now that I understand, because I will reach out to him and kind of explain. I didn't understand that, I'm sorry.
Can I ask one more thing we discussed or maybe even note?
Can we just maybe close public time before we
Yeah, did you
continue with other like new business or anything? I didn't get any sort of response or anything, so we should just close off that section.
Okay.
Okay. We're all good.
Just as one way we can, like, quarterly RSVP, maybe in 2 weeks like this, just.
So you have time to
So you
arrange your
know that we're gonna have a quorum or not,
Mhm.
because like, if I came home from work to make sure I attended this, and I take the time to documents before. So I think we should be better prepared.
Well, and I agree, and Veronica said she can help ours, and I only got the third one in my, but like you're saying, because I didn't go back.
That's where I saw somebody, I just searched Shelley and then I found
Right,
the other
so-
emails.
I got it. So I'm wondering though, since we're volunteers and you guys are paid, if there's an update, if there's an update on like something, a change in directions, could the paid person please have the email updated with all the attachments consolidated? That would be my request.
Like with the meeting invite, you're saying, like kind of have just
Well,
like a,
when we get the agenda with the specific topics,
Mhm.
this agenda update is a 3-page attachment, but it didn't have all
the referral packages.
the pro packages consolidated. in the
Right.
same email.
Because there's been stuff on a previous
Right.
month.
So when,
Now, it might have been 20 megabytes or something, sometimes that bounces from people's email.
yeah. So, but ultimately your request is when an agenda is updated, please provide all attachments again, so you have everything like in one email.
Consolidation so that, because we are volunteers, right?
What is this? Is this a point of order or is this just a new item to
Direction
add?
of staff.
Direction to staff? That sounds good.
Yeah, and I agree. We get to cut it.
Yeah.
But I will also follow up with Adam. I did not have a full understanding of how quorum works. The reason I'm sitting on this board basically is because hardly anybody is.
If,
Would we like to adjourn or is there anything else to?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Okay, moved. I'll second the motion.
Another vote.
So I've noted that it's adjourned at 4:17 p.m.
technically we adjourned at 4:04 because you lost quorum.
Oh,
It just occurred to me now.
oh,
I lost quorum.
Okay.
You could note that the lost quorum. I think it was around 5 past or 4 past.
Yeah, I have, I noted the time when she left.
However, the meeting date will be set up.
And, yeah, now that I have a better understanding.